wait to get the leftovers.
Thank you, Dr. Madsen. I hope that each of you have been inspired, as I've been inspired, to go back and look for people who need some extra encouragement, or just to encourage yourself and have more patience as well. And next we're going to start our panel. One second, grab the other files. So the first one, Helen. She is a professor of computer science at Westminster College, and she loves teaching small classes and trying out new teaching approaches to improve her students' learning. She has converted many of her classes to POBIL, which is process-oriented guided inquiry and learning, a research-based instructional strategy that emphasizes active learning and student collaboration. Helen earned her PhD from the University of Utah and her bachelor's from Princeton University, both in computer science. For the last 10 years, Helen has run a programming workshop for the awesome summer camp, a Westminster camp for 8th grade girls. Actually, just kidding. And she's an active member of the Utah Technology Council's Public Policy Forum, the National Computer Science Advocacy Leadership Team, and the Utah chapter for the Computer Science Teacher Association. She is a recipient of the Governor's Medal for Science and Technology and the Women of Tech Council Award for Educator Excellence for her work in introducing a new high school course, Exploring Computer Science. It's being taught in over 50 Utah schools and already has better gender equality than any other Utah high school computer science course. Earlier this year, Helen was awarded a 3-year AACNU TIDES grant to increase diversity in college STEM education. With this funding, Helen will be creating innovative new course combinations that are designed to excite first-year college students about the versatility of technology. Our next panelist is Carolyn Bussain. Carolyn Bussain is a paleontologist at the Natural History Museum of Utah. She received her bachelor's degree at the University of Wisconsin and completed her master's degree at the University of Utah in paleontology. She is now the Paleontology Collections Manager, where she organizes, houses, and curates all of the fossils at the Natural History Museum of Utah. She manages 4 student interns and 8 volunteers in collections. She spends 5 months of the year in the field making new dinosaur discoveries. Her research is on, I'm sorry, I didn't take any paleontology classes with you, ceratopsin, limb bone, histology cutting of dinosaur bones, and analyzing the microstructure to make conclusions on the growth and metabolism of these ancient creatures. When she isn't in the museum, in the field, or doing research, she spends as much time as she can hiking and traveling, and she can be contacted at www.carolynleavitt.com. Our last panelist is Natalie Shahmiri. Natalie is the marketing director for Wildworks, creators of the acclaimed social site for kids, National Geographic Animal Jam. With over a decade of experience in integrated media strategies for Fortune 100 companies, Natalie left the hills of San Francisco for the mountains of Salt Lake City to help take Animal Jam global, successfully launching in multiple territories around the world. A child and explorer at heart, she focuses on creating strategies and content that promotes the sciences and exploration to Animal Jam's 35+ million players, fostering children's natural curiosity to learn about the world around them. She's a believer in the power of play, laughter, and collaboration. While not planning world domination for Animal Jam, she runs a local design studio with her husband and tends to her growing family of animals. And our moderator for this will be Chrisella, who is the editor-in-chief of WhiteHat magazine.
Thank you, Amber. Thanks so much for being here, ladies. We have a great panel here today. I'm so excited to talk with them. So I'm going to kick this off by asking all of you to tell us a little bit about your work. We just heard your bios, but tell us what do you do in your day-to-day, and how do you kind of bring leadership into your day-to-day roles?
Yes, I'll begin. So I'm a college professor at Westminster College, and so I'll say that my time at Westminster has changed as I've been there. So I've been teaching there for about 12 years, and my first 5 years, my focus was teaching. and I would say the majority of my time was spent on teaching, which is what most people would expect of college professors. But actually, as I've grown there, I've been spending more and more time on other projects. So projects that I'm passionate about, my professional activities, my service activities. Until now, I probably spend half my time teaching and half my time on other things.
My name is Carolyn with Bussain. I'm a paleontologist, so I'm the Paleontology Collections Manager at the Natural History Museum of Utah. And what my job is there is I'm in charge of every fossil that comes into our museum and leaves the museum. And there's a lot of flux going on. We have specimens coming in for our field season. Our field season goes from about March until October. So we are constantly making fossil discoveries, so I'm in charge of everything that comes in. We are also the state repository for the state of Utah. So anybody else who discovers fossils, they have to deposit with us. In the state of Utah, they have to deposit with us. And then we also have donations as well. And then we have a lot of times fossils leaving collections. So whether they're going on a loan internationally or nationally, whether they're going on exhibit in our museum or another museum around the world, or on display, or something breaks in collections. A lot of time I'm in collections by myself, cold, in collections, and all of a sudden I hear a thunk. I'm like, what was that? And a dinosaur bone has broken in the back, and I have to send it down to the prep lab to be fixed. So I'm in charge of all of that. Then I'm also in charge of storing and curating and organizing all of the fossils and collections chronologically, so by time period, taxonomically by animal, anatomically, from the cranium all the way down to the feet. And then I have help, thank God, I have help. I have 4 interns and 5 wonderful volunteers, and I manage them, and they help me process all of the fossils that we find.
Hi everyone, I'm Natalie. I'm with Wildworks. I am their marketing director. I wanted to be a paleontologist so bad when I was little. I can't even tell you, my goodness. But I actually had nobody to encourage me to pursue the sciences. My dad was actually an engineer and suggested I be a writer. So there went that dream. But so now I do marketing, and I am very lucky to work here. I moved here from San Francisco to work on this property called Animal Jam. And our focus is to teach young girls about sciences. We do it in a pretty convoluted way. They think that they're coming in and getting to play online with all their friends. And we're just kind of force-feeding them nuggets of science information throughout that process. They think it's part of the gameplay, but we're like, you're learning and doing it. So it's a really fun experience for me because the sciences have always been my passion, but I wasn't guided in that direction. And so I kind of found a way in a very meandering path to get there on my own. So while these girls are learning in our game, I'm actually learning at the same time with them. So it's really exciting.
Natalie, you bring up a great point that, some of us, like I was actually the same way. I started out studying science, and then I actually went into writing and got a degree in what I like to lovingly call my BS degree in politics. So, so I went a completely different path. And so what I found now is that, you can bring your other talents back into science and back into STEM. You don't have to just focus on one field. And so I'd like to hear, how you bring a creative side to also a science side in developing a voice for a creative marketing company and a public, what's the balance between leadership internally and then leadership externally as a public voice as well?
Right, yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to say the least, particularly as a woman. My entire executive staff is men, and they're game developers, so talk about guys who like to play Dungeons and Dragons at night, It's a very, very different world than what I grew up in. So there is definitely a struggle there, one, to be heard, and I'm very fortunate that they're very open-minded, particularly for here in the state of Utah. But yeah, how do you get people to buy into this notion that girls, most importantly, need to be a part of this, right? I mean, like we heard earlier, 4th grade, they're just like, science isn't for me anymore. And it's, how do we encourage them to realize just because it's hard doesn't mean you can't do it, Keep pushing forward. We naturally are better communicators. We like to connect with one another. And so we tend to get kind of siphoned off into the arts. Which is why we tend to be more creative professions. I come from an advertising background. It's about 75 to 90% women, depending what city you're in. But to say that because, we're focused on that doesn't mean we can't do technology. Any of us can change that around at this point. I mean, I run a design firm with my husband. I'm the one that codes all the websites. He's the designer. So I think there's always that opportunity to say we're going to take a shift and find ways to do that. Just like you were saying in your role, that's transitioned over time and you were able to find your passions and pursue that. I think there's always an opportunity to find that, and that's been really important for me. I'm a writer by trade. I build websites, I design apps. I found other things that I was really interested in and pursued it and found mentors to help me do that.
So on the note of transitions, I think we all kind of face challenges that at one point have sent us off in one way or another. And I'd like to hear some of the challenges that you have faced and how you have overcome them in your fields.
So a lot of people don't know you can actually be a paleontologist, and even more so, a lot of times I work with a lot of older men volunteers, and they, wearing lab coats, they're wonderful. They work in the prep lab, and I have to do a lot of fossil identifications. They're almost always rocks, but I still do the fossil identifications, and I get called down, and a lot of times my volunteers come with me. And almost all the time, they always think the guy in the lab coat is the scientist, is the paleontologist, and they even shake their hand like, "Oh, thank you so much for taking the time." I'm like, "I'm the paleontologist." And all my volunteers point to her, "No, it's her. I don't know the answers." And I have that happen all the time. My field is dominated by men. At scientific conferences, there's not a lot of women, and so when people come to expect to see research, they see me, standing there presenting my research. So it's always a surprise, and it shouldn't be. But paleontology is really, really cool career, and I'm one of the guys. I work in a wonderful place where I do work with a lot of men, but they all know that I'm a paleontologist, and when you go out in the field and you're out there for a very long time, you become one of the guys, believe me. I can pull the rock saw just like all the guys do. So, but yeah, I think that's a hard struggle. But once you talk to them, you're like, "No, I'm the paleontologist. I can answer your questions," and give them more education. I think that they can realize real quick that you do know what you're talking about.
So I've experienced the same thing Carolyn was talking about. It's known as microaggressions, where it's always assumed that you're not the expert in the room. The man next to you is the expert. And one of the things I've been passionate about, I mentioned, is computer science education in Utah. And this has involved talking to people like the school board, the state school board, legislators. And the problem I found there is I don't have credibility. They don't know who I am. Even if I say I'm a professor of computer science, they don't know who I am. And so what I've had to do is make partnerships. It makes a huge difference when I know someone and they start to believe that I know what I'm talking about, and then they can introduce me to the other members of the school board. They can introduce me to legislators and say, "This person, you should believe what she's saying." And that has made a huge difference for me. So yes, it's unfortunate that as women we sometimes need to work harder for respect, which is very unfortunate. And so finding ways of getting around that. I wanted to also throw out something about, there was a study by Google about why high school girls go into computer science. And there are completely different reasons than why boys go into computer science. And so I wrote it down. There's 4 reasons why high school girls go into computer science, and that's social encouragement from their parents and from their peers. Number 2 is interest in math and problem solving. So that's not that they're good at it, that's just that they are interested in it. They think it's fun to solve problems and puzzles. Number 3 is academic exposure, so they've taken classes in computer science in high school or some camps in computer science. And then career perception, so that they know what people do as computer science. And notice none of those things is natural aptitude. So natural aptitude, whether a girl in high school is good at computer science, has nothing to do with whether they go into computer science as a career or as a study, which is unbelievable in many ways. So that mentorship and social encouragement makes such a difference for high school girls.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely taking a leadership role wherever you can. A lot of events and partners that I work with are very male-dominated, and I'm kind of a little snot. I always make sure to stand up and shake people's hands before any other man in the room can. So I think a lot of it is really how do you perceive yourself and how do you put yourself out there, and that makes a really big difference. I thankfully don't have the issue where a lot of people are like, she's not the expert because I'm so dang loud about it. They just know. That's definitely a personality trait of mine, so I'm lucky in that regard. But I think it is really important to, when you're in those positions, especially in a position of leadership, to make it known that you are the leader in what you do and to be really confident in that. And sometimes it's intimidating, without a doubt. I've definitely been in boardrooms with a lot of really, really rich, educated men. And it's like, oh my gosh, am I ready for this? Are they even going to hear me? And you just have to be like, you know what, I know what I'm doing. And if they don't hear it, that's their loss. And you just go for it.
The mentorship that Helen mentioned earlier is, one reason why we put together this event today, because there are so many studies showing that if there is a mentor, or if a young girl has a mentor, or someone who is willing to go to bat for them and fight for them, either to get through school, to graduate, or in a career to get a promotion, that young woman will end up doing much better in her career, and she will drop out of the field. She's much less likely to drop out of the field. So I wanted to ask you, what has been probably the most helpful in getting you where you are today? Has it been an education? Has it been a particular mentor? What has it been for you?
I saw the mic, so I'll take it first. I actually love having mentors, and it took me a long time to realize the value of a mentor, and I think everybody needs them. None of us know everything. A lot of my mentors are actually men. They're people that I've worked with or for in the past who knew stuff that I didn't know and that I could really gain a lot of knowledge from. My education in particular for advertising only went so far. A lot of it is what you learn by doing. And there's a lot of failure in that, a ton. And so it's really kind of figuring out who can I lean on to help me navigate those obstacles. So I consistently reach out to people and ask them to be mentors. It's a very awkward conversation to have. Most of the time they're very flattered. Sometimes it's just, what do you mean? What is a mentor? But it's good to have a network of people that you can turn to and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. What would you do? And a lot of times that perspective makes a huge impact.
I was fortunate enough to have a mentor. When I was 12, I was fortunate enough to go on a family vacation to Hot Springs, South Dakota, where there's a mammoth site with 63 woolly mammoths, or Columbian mammoths and 3 woolly mammoths all found in the same hole. And it's really cool. You have to go. So at that point, people stereotypically the day that changed my life, but I actually had one where I was going in a 12-year-old girl, either wanting to be a princess or an astronaut, depending on which came first. And I met the PI, the head paleontologist at the Hot Springs, South Dakota mammoth site, Dr. Larry Agenbrod. And he saw something in me that I didn't, and he answered all my stupid little girl questions about the fossilization and dinosaurs and stuff like that. And he gave me his business card and said, hey, write me a letter if you have any more questions. And I did. And then when I was 14, he invited me on a dig. So I started digging mammoths when I was 14. And he was a wonderful mentor throughout my high school career. He wrote me letters of recommendation for National Honor Society. He wrote me letters of recommendation to get into undergrad, then grad school, the Explorers Club in New York, all that stuff. So I was very fortunate for that. I try now to kind of step in his footsteps. I do job shadowing. I have people interview me. I am also a mentor. If anybody's interested in paleontology, I have them come and see what I do during the day. And a lot of times people don't think paleontologist is an actual career, but it is. So I do try to do that too. But I think really helped me in my career, in addition to a really great educational ground and having this wonderful contact with Dr. Agenbrod, is I also volunteered and also did internships and got myself out there. You have to do stuff for free sometimes in order to get the experience that gets you qualified. I worked in a lot of museums, internships at the Field Museum and the Berkeley Museum and all that stuff, and also presented at conferences. So I really think that that's good. Conferences are just amazing, like this, but having experience presenting your research or just meeting the people that you want to go to grad school with or go to undergrad with or just want to be or have any advice on your career path. So conferences are really important, I think.
So my mentor, I was very lucky. I'd say my mentor was my mother. I am a second generation female computer science person, which is, yes. So my mother did this. And so I think, I have to confess, I don't think I had a mentor in high school in terms of, I think the computer science teacher in high school ignored me because I was a woman, right? I mean, that's what you, but I knew it was okay because I had that person at home and I had a working mother, and so that also helped me know that that was possible. And to be honest, helps me not feel guilty about working, which is important. I would also say, along those same lines, what has made it possible for my success has been finding the right partner. So I am married, I have children, and from the very beginning, I told my husband when he was my boyfriend that I planned on working, I planned on having a career. Now, and he was committed to it. I will note something very funny that happened, which was after I had my first child, I went back to work, and later on, maybe 5 years after my first child, my husband actually said to me, "You know, I really didn't think you were going to go back to work." I knew you had said all this time, I just assumed when you had your first child, you would stay home and you would suddenly discover that that's what you wanted. And it did take him a few years, even after having spent all those years of being a committed partner and saying, yes, we were going to split things 50-50. It did take him a while to adjust to, I was going to commit to my career, but that has made it possible for my success.
What about you ladies? Do you want to talk about relationships and families, balancing work?
I am married to a wonderful guy who followed me from Wisconsin, which is really great. Yeah, it was kind of like, I guess he knew my personality enough to be like, I'm going on digs for about 4 months out of the year. I'm sorry, I won't be around. And he's really great about that, accepting me for who I am and the career that I chose.
I'm lucky enough to be married as well. I run a business with my husband. We are together all of the time. It's a little intense, but I adore him, so it's fun. But yeah, I mean, a support network in general, whether it's a partner, your friends, your family, your colleagues, anybody that helps push you to keep growing and learning and going after the things you want, is really, really important to have. I remember at one point in my career, a lot of my friends were at the age where they were starting to get married and just kind of like dropping out of their careers like flies. And I totally understood their passion to raise a family, and that wasn't something that I wanted to do. And there was a very weird tension between all of us, and that they were going to do that, and I had opted to stay a career woman. And I think even to this day, I still feel that for people of, well, what about a family? You know, you have to stop working at some point and raise kids. And you don't, you know, you can be a working mom, you can not have children. I have 9 animals at home, they are my kids. So it's really, how do you find that network of people that support what it is that you want to do for you? My spouse is very supportive of it, my family is very supportive of it. They understand that I'm a doer and I constantly have to be working, it's what fulfills me, and they understand that that takes all of my time. I'm here on weekend, you know? And that has been probably my greatest blessing, is that so many people were so supportive of that.
I'm another fur baby mom, so and I'll echo that sentiment. My husband's here today running the live stream. My mom and my sister are here volunteering to help out. Like, having a support network, especially for someone who's trying to start up their own business, it's really something you can't do without. And to find those people that really do. They understand what you're doing and they're really there for you and will encourage you. They can be just as important as mentors and people who guide you along that path. So I wanted to ask, you mentioned something earlier about intimidation and reaching out to mentors. And that's something that I know I hear every now and then that, oh, I can't reach out to them, I can't bother them. They're such busy people, I don't want to bother them or ask them for help. How do you get past that fear? How do you, reach out there and just say, look, I need to ask this somebody, I need a mentor, I need to ask somebody for help?
For me, you guys probably wouldn't believe it, but I used to be really self-conscious and shy. And I think for me, I kind of hit a point where I realized, okay, if I ask for something and somebody says no, I'm in no different a position than I was had I not asked. So for me, I think it's always worth just putting yourself out there and seeing what happens. And very rarely do people say no. People intrinsically want to help one another. You occasionally meet somebody who's really awful and who's just like, absolutely not. But it's really, really rare. So I think just realizing that there's really nothing to lose. Maybe your ego will be hurt a little bit if somebody says no, but who cares? The fact that you can gain so much otherwise if they say yes makes it totally worth it.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot of courage to ask somebody, especially somebody you revere or you look up to, for help and advice and encouragement. I know that when I was trying to get into grad school, you're trying to put yourself out there, and I'd go to the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology conference every year and try to sell myself, be like, I'm really useful and important. You'd have to go talk to some paleontologists, and there are some egotistical, very famous paleontologists out there, mostly men, who are kind of intimidating, and you go out there and you say, hi, this is who I am, I really think you're great, can you answer some of my questions? And sometimes they just ignore you. And you kind of have to deal with that, and you kind of have to realize that some people are nicer than others, and you find the right one. And you do. There, like you said, there are a lot of nice people out there. Not all of them are nice, but there are a lot of nice people, so you kind of do have to have a lot of courage to ask, but it's definitely worth it.
I think my suggestion would be trying to ask for something specific. So asking the question, will you be my mentor, is too vague. If you ask, will you come out to lunch with me, and just, can I take you out to lunch so that, to ask you some questions, right? Or can you introduce me to someone? I mean, something simple, a simple question really helps, something that they understand what you're asking for. So that's what I'm going to ask.
We're coming up we want to give the audience a chance to ask some questions as well, so I'm going to have this be the last question from me. So one thing that we want to highlight today is everyday leadership. How we can, just in our day-to-day lives, put on this kind of leadership mentality that we talked about earlier. So how do you demonstrate everyday leadership, and do you have any advice for young women that they can incorporate into their lives?
So I feel what's important, what I do, of course, is I believe strongly that there needs to be a computer science course in every Utah high school locally. And so that's the problem that I have identified, I feel passionate about, and then I put all my time into. All my time that's not specifically just teaching at Westminster is spent on that. And so I would say, find something you're passionate about. Find something you want to change, and then see what the next steps are.
So I have to manage people for the help that I get, and what I find that helps me to be a better manager is to be organized, and not. I have to organize things for a living, but sometimes in my own personal brain, I'm not as organized as I probably should. But in order to manage people, I have to be organized. I have to come up with projects for them to work on, and so I think being organized is a really good skill to have, and also confidence. No one's going to take you seriously if you're kind of meek in the corner, and if you go up and like, hi, I'm a person you should know. I think that does go a long way, and that does take a lot of courage. But if you do take the step to say that you're important, I definitely think that's useful.
I think a lot of times people perceive women is in leadership roles that they're just going to be, excuse my language, but a total bitch. And I've definitely experienced that. There are women that think that to be a leader, you have to be really, really tough and clamp down on people and be a man, which is funny because most men leaders are not like that at all. So I don't know where that perception comes from. But I think it's really important And a skill set that women really have is our ability to be compassionate and to see opportunity in others and skills in others and foster that in others. So I always recommend, even within my own team, I've hired quite a few women on my own team to tap into that. I mean, that's a natural resource you have. Use that barometer of really realizing where somebody is at. How can you be more compassionate towards the people around you? See what they're really good at and help foster those skills instead of pointing out what's wrong. And I think that's what makes people strong leaders, is really leading by example, being a good leader and not being mean. That's really important. But identifying those traits and helping people move forward, I think, makes a big difference.
All right, we're going to open it up for some audience questions now. We ask, since we are recording this, if you have a question, let us know. We'll bring a mic to you. But any questions?
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Hello, I was just wondering what you would suggest if you're trying to get your friends also interested in STEM. I have lots of friends who are very intelligent, but who are not as engaged as I am.
I think for me in particular, it's just by opening them up to experiences around it. Like I said, I am a coder, I'm a developer, I build websites. And a lot of my friends have their own small businesses, little Etsy shops, and they're like, wait a minute, I want a website. And it's like, well, don't pay for it, build it. And so I think a lot of times just showing people what it is you do, you don't have to overtly say, come and do this with me, like you should be into STEM too, let's all be in super science people. It's really just by showing people what it is that you're into, and that interest might just exist within them naturally, where they'll want to learn more, and you can help provide that for them.
Absolutely. I think you can lead by example, just being like, this is what I do, and if they're interested in that or something like that, you can kind of foster that and help them along.
So what, are you in college level?
I'm a high school student.
Okay, high school, okay. So for high schoolers, I think what really helps is encouraging your friends to take a class with you, right? So not any class, but a class that you've heard from other students that students like, right? So if you can convince them to take a science class with you that you know is going to be good, if you can convince them to take a computer science class, and go ahead and try to convince them, and that often makes a huge difference, and it also helps your success, right? You're not one of 2 girls in the class, you're maybe now one of 4 or 5 girls in the class, which helps. I know how it is.
I think another thing is that there is this perception that to get involved in STEM, you have to be the super science nerd, is that all, playing with beakers or doing math all day sort of thing. When really, we're going to hear about this in our next session, you can incorporate an artistic talent in that as well. And so if somebody likes to draw, it's something where they can learn to be a graphic designer and incorporate that into their art or something like that. So, or with the building a website, bring that artistic element into the coding and see how you can build a more beautiful website sort of thing. So I kind of try to reach out to both people's sides, their artistic side and their technical side. Just gonna bring this back to you. Okay.
Hi, I have a quick question about women in the workplace. I've noticed that it's kind of a big issue where women often shame other women, and I'm wondering if that's something that you've experienced and how we can combat that in the workplace so women are building each other up rather than breaking each other down.
Oh yeah. I work in advertising. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Actually, in my most current role, I experienced that pretty fiercely. There was somebody who was very interested in my job in a different department who really set out to get my job. It was pretty interesting. And I think the most important thing when you see that kind of stuff happening is do not engage. That's really, really important. And really be supportive of people around you that are doing good, right? It's really, really easy in the workforce to get sucked into the water cooler chatter about what's going wrong, every awful thing that every person did. It's very rare that people say, this person rocks. You never hear that. It's everything that everybody does wrong. And that's a natural thing that we do. Gossip isn't necessarily a bad thing, But how can you offset that when you see that it's becoming out of control, or that somebody's becoming malicious, or really trying to tear somebody down? Be supportive of that person who's being torn down, because no matter how tough they are, that is a difficult thing to go through. And try to lead by example as well, and don't engage in those kind of activities. So when you see that kind of stuff happening, be the opposite. Be the person that's giving out praise to people and congratulating people. And you know, a big thing for me as a manager is when my team does something really incredible, I never take the credit for it because they did it. I just help them get there. So I think by leading by example through that kind of stuff, you can help deflect that, but it's there, and men do it to one another too. It's definitely not just women. But the biggest one is if you're ever in that immediate situation, do not engage. I mean, don't feed that person at all.
So I've been really lucky in my workplace to work with some amazing women, and so I haven't had this happen within the workplace, but since I work out with a lot of outside groups a lot, I do have that, you know, I run into that every now and then where people start gossiping around town or that sort of thing. And so while I, yes, do not engage, do not take part of it is a big part of it. Another thing is go back to those social networks, those support networks that you have, and help, you know, use them to remind yourself that you are worth it, that you are valuable, and that, you know, you can do this. And so in that way, kind of, not only are you building up your own self-esteem so that you can handle it, but you're also developing a thicker skin. So, you know, if somebody is gossiping about you or saying these, you know, stupid little things that really in the end don't matter, it's able to kind of, you're able to brush it off a little bit better. So.
I think there is a movement right now where we in Utah are recognizing that there is a problem. And so there's a lot of room for a woman to grow right now if she can find the confidence. But we do need to be our own advocates. So we do need to be looking for promotions on our own. Right? When something's offered, Susan mentioned this earlier, that men will apply for a promotion when apparently they're only meet 70% of the qualifications, but women won't even consider it until we've had 100% of the qualifications. Right? And so we need to be willing to put ourselves forward for promotions and put ourselves forward for negotiating on our salaries and asking for raises, which is not something that women have been traditionally strong about.
I'm from out of state, and I've actually recruited a lot of people from out of state, and I get that question a lot as well. It's just like, what am I stepping into? And I think both men and women feel that about coming to Utah. It's just like, I'm coming through the curtain, what's going to happen? And I wondered it myself. I was just like, oh, I really hope this works out. So I think one is you work there, and hopefully you're happy there. And so you can speak to your own experience. But I think also too, there is this tide of change that's happening. And so I encourage people, like, one, nobody's gonna eat you, you know, like, okay, the executive staff might not be awesome, but you run that risk at any company you go to, whether that's here in Utah or elsewhere. And so it's really about encouraging people like, hey, we're talking to you because you're awesome. If we didn't think you could handle being out here, we wouldn't have called you in the first place, right? So really reinforcing that they have the skill set that you guys are looking for, that if you didn't feel that they would succeed in this workplace, you never would have contacted them in the first place. I think that will help a lot. And just get them out here, get them to try the food and hang out downtown and see what the culture is like, and I think that would definitely help.
Any other questions?
outline about how you can work through it if you have a little bit more confidence. What do you do if you are in a workplace situation where you are put down regularly because you're a woman in a field that is not a field where women generally work? I don't work there anymore, but I used to work for a company where I was treated very, very differently than my male coworkers. To the point where I felt like I couldn't come to my boss for anything because I felt like I'd always be put down. What would you recommend for people in that situation?
Exactly what you did. Leave your job. Some places are just awful, and I don't know why, but sometimes once that culture really just becomes set in their ways, fighting that battle almost isn't even worth it, right? I mean, like, you want to say, I'm going to stand up for women and leave my mark, and it's going to be great. And, you know, honestly, sometimes that battle just, it really, really isn't worth it for your own sanity, right? I mean, maybe if you've got a team of other women and you're like, yeah, F the man, we're going to do it. You can, but when it's just you and you're in an environment like that, that's just a toxic environment. And whether you're a male or a female, you don't want to be around people like that. So you're way better off taking your expertise and putting that to a place that's going to appreciate you and where you have room for growth and will succeed.
Yeah, to kind of echo that, sometimes the battle's not worth it. I have a friend who was treated poorly by her supervisor, and she was a very, charismatic leadership kind of a person, and she would keep on applying for raises and applying for special projects, and keep on getting shot down, and you can only be shot down so many times. And you can go to your supervisor, and because it's a problem. I mean, you shouldn't have to deal with that, but sometimes, like you said, it's not worth it. You don't deserve to be treated that way. You should just find somewhere else.
I agree that it really comes down to the company. If you're the only person there, you made the right decision to leave. If you're at a company that's larger, that has a HR department which is aware of these problems, which is concerned about diversity, it helps to bring it to their attention, even if it's on the way out, so that they know this is an issue. Otherwise, surprisingly, people aren't even aware that it's an issue. And so, if it's a large enough company, and if there is someone in the company who's a champion for diversity issues, I think it's great to bring it to their attention. The smaller the company, the less likely there's someone there that's also a champion.
Are there any other questions? All right, let's give these ladies a big round of applause. Here.
I just want to plug the museum. If you haven't already been to the Natural History Museum of Utah, you really should get up there. We have a new exhibit that's called Extreme Mammals, and it's only in for, I think, the rest of July.
It's really good.
It's so cool. It's awesome. You should definitely check it out. I'm going to be at the roundtable session a little bit later. I'll have fossils, so that'll be really exciting. But I also have my business card, and I love to give tours, and I would love to give people behind-the-scenes tours of the prep lab and the collections, paleontology collections. So find me. Go to the museum.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Thank you.